And welcome to an exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and tonight's episode is being pre-recorded, so we are not in the chat room. However, with that being said, if you have any questions or anything while this is playing, feel free to put them in the chat room, and I will, or comment to the show, and I will get you your answers. So now that I've cleared the air on that, I have the distinct pleasure and honor and feeling a little distinguished. I don't know where that's coming from, but it's there. So I'm going to hand over and introduce our wonderful, amazing guest. You guys are in for a treat with her, the one, the only, extraordinaire, Stacey Lynne.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming on. So for those who, have maybe been kind of new to the circuit or not really into the paranormal, could you give a little bit of who you are and introduce yourself a little?
Sure. So my name is Stacey Lynne, and I'm from Jersey, and I am a physical and psychic medium. I had one of my first experiences when I was in a crib with a shapeshifter, and I like reading tarot. I'm very artistic, intuitive. I believe that we're here in this human existence having a spiritual journey, and we're just growing through it. And that's about it. I mean, there's many things that I like to do, but communicating with energies, spirit, is one of my favorites.
Well, before we get into that, you mentioned something that I'm like, I feel I would be miffed and people wondering why I didn't inquire about. And that is, how do you have a medium experience? So, like, as you said, so young, and before you even really, were you able even to voice anything at this point?
It's almost like deja vu, as you grow and you reflect back on things that are familiar to you. In hindsight now, 53 years later, I actually look at that situation and can see it almost in third person. One thing that I do is I journey a lot and I do remote view. So I'm not limited to my journeys in the non-woke state when we're supposed to be sleeping. It's very active for me. And reflecting back on that moment when I was supposed to be sleeping and napping, and my mom was vacuuming because she wanted to desensitize me to noise. My globe, my lamp in my room turned into a shapeshifter, and I was having a really great time getting into trouble. And it just was something that I never questioned. And it was something that continued to grow in different forms, in different ways. And now that I look at it 53 years later, it's like I can stand in that landing of my cape that I grew up in and watch me bouncing around having a great time. And I can see my mom, and it's just, it's like a different view on it. And it just hasn't stopped. It's like every phase of your life, you just grow with it. But in hindsight, it just evolved over the years on how I saw that. When I went to sleep, I would recall that memory. I would see it. I would be in different viewpoints of that energetic imprint.
So I'm curious, was that the only time you saw the shapeshifter? And the other part is, do you think seeing the shapeshifter so young and at the time that you did kind of prepared you for what was ahead?
I don't think we're ever prepared for it because growing up, that was not something that you talked about. And I believe that we all have abilities. We all have the ability to do what we do. It's just where you are, the experiences that led you there. A lot of my experiences growing up were I was always by myself. You know, my mom was working, my parents were divorced, my sister was busy, and I just spent a lot of time sitting in self and growing, just a lot of health issues. I drowned when I was 5 years old, and my father brought me back. I've had a couple of near death experiences. I've seen the light, I've seen a darker light. It's, it's, I believe that when we sit in pain and we grow, that really brings us to places that we never thought that we could ever be. Fast forward to 2017, I had a foot surgery, and I always knew that I was intuitive, and we are. When someone has a conversation with you and you give them advice because you feel a certain way, that's a psychic ability. That's an intuitive ability. You're tapping into how you're responding to that moment. And I don't think people give credit to that. But I'm sitting there talking to my mom as she's making my coffee, and then all of a sudden my grandfather was in the room. And it was just like one of those moments like, okay, I really don't know what to do with this because I had always been a dreamer. I've always had premonitions. I always saw things, and things that didn't make sense, but they were always validated. But we all do that. So I don't know if we're ever really prepared to be in that situation. But I think the more that you relax in the moment and just trust the process, I think it happens a lot more for people. And that's just trusting that process.
And you bring up a good point that I've heard a lot of stories and there's a lot of contradiction around. And that is, I hear some people say, yeah, you go through this great light when you go to the other side on your NDE. And some people say, no, you're not supposed to go to the light. That's an illusion. And you'll go somewhere else with the near death experience. And so it kind of triggered in my mind when you said, yeah, there was a light and then there was a darker light. So, can you, if it's okay and not an uncomfortable situation, can you elaborate on the difference between the light and the darker light?
there's always good and bad, right? There's two different sides, and then you have that little gray area. And we live a lot in that gray area because we're having these experiences and we're growing and we're trying to work through what we've been through before. So it's all about learning, growing, and forgiving, forgiveness. The day that I fell in the pool and I drowned, I remember it was an in-ground pool and there was a light over the pool. We were at, my father was a police officer in a local town by me, and it was a policeman's barbecue. So all the police officers, the law enforcement and their families would come have this big barbecue. And my sister, myself, and I don't recall who she was, but we were hanging out by the pool and I was rocking on my lawn chair and I was quite a ways far away from the side of the pool. And my father's like, Stacey Lynne, stop rocking that chair. You're going to fall in the deep end. And I was like, yeah, I'm so far away. Like, okay, Dad. So all the adults went inside and started playing cards, and I was rocking. And the next thing I know, I was in the pool. And I remember struggling and looking up at the light that was shining in the water. It was dark out. And I remember that moment when I just stopped struggling. Like it was very uncomfortable. And then it wasn't uncomfortable. And as I was looking up at that light above the pool, it just got really light. And the next thing I knew, I felt just like stop struggling. Like I won't say I was okay, but it was like a light switch after I saw that light. And the next thing I know, my father's standing over me and everybody's screaming and crying and I'm throwing up water. And we talk about that a lot. And to this day, I have a lot of water events in my life and I have a lot of, I guess what you want to call like triggers, fears when it comes to surging water, especially tsunamis. It goes way back. But that was one instance. Back in 2016, about 2015, the summer, almost the fall, I had been really sick. And I went to a million specialists. They all said, everything's fine with you. Nothing's wrong with you. There was a lot of pain. I was very sick. And I found myself just not able to do anything. And life was continuing on. The kids were going to school, the husband was working, and I just felt like I just sat on the corner of a couch and my day would be over. And there was just a lot of sickness and pain. And my girlfriend calls me and she's like, Stace, I want you to go see my doctor because I want you to get another opinion. I think that they're wrong. And I'm like, well, they're all telling me that everything is fine. Made a phone call. He saw me the next day and it wound up I was actually septic and I had to go in for a huge surgery. And he had to put me on really high doses of antibiotics for 2 weeks. And I remember being in the hospital, getting ready. They were doing my IV and everything. And I was going down the hallway and I'm watching the lights. My heart's pounding. And I'm like, I said, God, I am really okay. I'm tired of this. I'm tired. It's been a year and a half. If this is my time, I'm good with it. Like, I'm really good with it. I'm just so tired of being sick, so tired of being in pain. So my family wheeled me into the room. My doctor was wonderful. I was so nervous. He literally, because they put you on like a cross. They tie you down, strap you down, and my doctor just like laid over me and held me until I went under. And when I went under, I found myself in this very loud, and when I say loud, like in the ears, like the rumbling, it was this higher, very pitchy rumbling, and it was ominous to me. And although I couldn't really see around me. I knew that I had energies around me. And I was just like, okay, what is this? Because I was there, but I knew that I was on the table. And that was one of my moments. And I was just like, wow, what is this? And it was, I didn't see flames and I didn't see, you know, strange creatures and all that. It was just a energetic, different space. And I felt like somebody was in front of me. And all of a sudden I heard, "So you're really okay with this?" And I'm like, "No." Like I was no. And I was there and I thought about that moment in the pool while I was there. So I'm like in three different places. And I'm like, "Oh no. No, no, no. I'm not okay with this and I have stuff to do and I want to live till I'm 100 and whatever." So anyway, next thing I know, I'm being woke up in the operating room, and my surgeon has seen a few things in his time being a surgeon, and he was just like, "Welcome back." And I'm like, "Yeah." So for what I went through, they normally keep you in the hospital for observation for 2 days. Well, he walked in the room and I'm like, "Can I go home?" And the nurse was like writing down notes and just going over everything and checking my vitals and everything. She looks at him, she goes, "Go." She can't go home. And I'm like, "I want to go home." And he's looking at me and he's like, "If you can get out of bed, you can go to the bathroom, you can get yourself dressed, then I'll let you go home." And the nurse is like, "No, like she's got to stay here." And he goes, "Let me tell you something. If she can do that, she wants to go home, I'm sending her home." And I went home that night. And we've had so many conversations about so many different things. Like I felt in that moment like you were you were there to keep me grounded. And that's the whole thing about these experiences. Like, people don't talk about it because I believe that we're raised not to talk about it. Like, I know that my grandparents and my mother'd be like, I'd say something, my mom would be like, "Stacey Lynne, you were just too much. Like, don't say those things." And I'd be like, "Okay, we'll talk about it." And then I would be like, "Hey, mom, when my kids are older, there's going to be like cars that fly." And she's like, "Oh my God, Stacey Lynne, just stop it." So I just stopped asking. And like I was that dreamer and I like to be alone making mud pies in the backyard, but I was never alone. But that was the norm for me. So when you said at that very young age, did I know? No. But after 53 years, now I'm looking back and I see that journey that I've taken. I'm like, "Oh, I get it now." Like, and then you see the little things and the people that come in and out of your life and the reason why we keep going through these experiences. So I do believe that there's a wide spectrum of what we call the light, the dark, the gray area, but we're really just going through it all. And it just has its peaks and valleys.
Yeah. So, my next question for you probably have never been asked, and it's something that's new to me that I've just started inquiring about my own self and my experience. And that is, what impact did these two near death experiences have on you? And what do you feel came of them? Like, did you have abilities come from those experiences activating, or what did you recall now looking back at?
Looking back at it from my first experience with the shapeshifter, and I remember all the things it turned into, I really never had another experience with that situation until about 6 years ago. So I went from that kind of energetic, I guess what if you want to call it paranormal experience, to looking at someone and watching their eyes change and seeing like a different form of them from a higher dimension, which I consider their higher self, but we all have higher selves and there's many of them, but it depends on where you are in your soul's journey. So through the years reflectively now, I look at it and I go, oh, I remember that deja vu. Oh, I remember that premonition. And it just evolves and grows into something different. I'm still having new experiences, but I always knew growing up and through school, like my mom was very intuitive, very intuitive. She actually worked with missing persons. She's a police officer, went through the police academy, taught the police academy 15 years. Very strong, strong woman, but she was quiet. She didn't say much, but when she did, it was very impactful. And anytime I tried to get away with something like cutting school, and I only did it twice in high school, she was waiting for me in her car, like she knew I was up to something, and looking at my grandmoms and, Mimas, and just remembering how the time that I spent with them and the things that happened and the looks they gave me, like that communication, like sometimes words don't need to be said. So that evolved through my health issues. I'm going to say health issues. We all have health issues, but it wasn't until the last 6, 7 years when I really started that roller coaster with no brakes. The shadow work, the waking up with bumps and bruises from the past lives that I was experiencing in my journeys. Like it's like a bull in a china shop, and nobody tells you about that. But knowing that there was something, I just had to figure it out. And I've always just had this rooting myself and grounding myself with trust the process. But I'm so different and I look at things so differently now because of those experiences, because everything that's growing. And I get up every day and I'm like, what's going to happen today? Who am I going to experience? Who's going to present themselves to me? I can walk outside like I did tonight. I was, starting up the grill to make dinner, and I saw an elemental energy shoot across my lawn in the backyard. And at first I'm like, doing, ooh, and then I'm like, hi, of course, have a good night, those kinds of things. So there are things that are still new to me when they happen because they always happen in a different way. But I think they know that, and I think that I know that they know you. And it's just really amazing. Like I'm just in awe and feel so excited every day. And I have bad days. I'm a normal person like everybody else, and I get loud on the road when I'm driving and somebody cuts me off, but this journey is just ever evolving. It's always new, it's always changing. I'm always learning about the communication and how they come forward and want to share and give me messages. So I mean, that in itself is just mind blowing. It's mind blowing.
No, that's beautiful. And one of the things I'm curious about as well is you mentioned remote view. Have you ever been like stuck in a situation or doing shadow work and was like, ooh, I can remote view myself and get the answers that I need and get an upper hand?
Okay, so I'll explain how I do it, but that's an area I can't do yet. So it's like a fishing line, right? So how I experience it right now is like somebody throwing a fishing line and reeling me in. So if I'm connected to you and you're like, "Hey, Stace, I'm going to Trans-Allegheny asylum for an investigation. You know, um, I can connect through you because you're going with energies there, but they always come to me and bring me in. It's like a leading, like, hold my hands, let me lead you across the bridge. That's how I experience it. But if I have a client, like I have a client in New Hampshire who just reached out, she's having all kinds of interesting happenings on her property and in her house. And she's texting me and we're making a time to speak, and this energy pops up. And she's a jokester and she's telling me all these things, but it's always them coming to me. It's not me going, okay, I'm going to go to sleep tonight and I miss my dad, so I'm going to have an astral experience, out of body experience, and go visit him. I know that my sister and my dad do that. Like, you see them sitting up and laying down at the same time, and they've done that all their lives. I've never done that. Like, so it's always them leading me right now. But I have started to read about how to do that yourself. I'm just not there yet.
No, that's really cool, and it's cool how that pulls you in, and so it's like a way of saying we're giving you permission to be here, even though you're not here, and so you get to partake. And one of the things that we've been kind of talking a lot about, but not really engaging in, is energy work. And I'm looking at it from a perspective. I do Reiki myself and other modalities, and I view every time something happens to me, I can tap into different energies. And so when you talk about doing like shadow work and being this psychic medium type that you are, do you feel like it's because of all the energy work you've been doing your entire life that you kind of are like this beacon that's glowing really bright and so everything comes to you? Or how does that work in view to you?
Well, that grows. And I don't think that I ever thought I was a beacon of light. I mean, I went to school, I went to college, we went and got married and bought a house, and we did all those things that we're supposed to do. And I went into corporate America, and I had a very good career. I worked in a cubicle, I wore a suit, very structured. And I look at myself now and how I've tinkery evolved into the hippie I was always meant to be. And I'm still evolving. But I never considered myself a beacon of light. I know that when I came out, my friends were like, we knew it. There was always something different about you. You could walk in a room and you're like a light bulb. And I never viewed myself as that. I just always loved people. And I always loved hosting and cooking and making sure everybody was okay. And we all have our different paths. We all, like I said, have abilities, but I do believe it's our personal moments of going in self, sitting in self, and really analyzing, wow, was that real? Let me just work through that. And the possibilities of always being, I was always a dreamer. And I think that being open in that way might have led me down that road faster. We're always predispositioned for where we go because we choose that, right? This is all about our personal journey and our growth that we promised ourselves before. So now I say that I am a light and I'm shining mine so I can help you find yours. And everybody has a light, and sometimes it gets bright, sometimes it gets dim, Sometimes it goes out for a little while. But that's why we do what we do, because we need to know that there's a higher energetic realms, and I'm not somebody who believes in death. I believe on a continued journey, because that's what we are, and everything is energy. So I just think that our experiences always shape ourselves, and I think that we just continue to grow, and it's based on how open-minded you are. We all get busy. You know, I was having a lot of experiences, and then life got me busy. And I was focusing on the wedding, getting married, the having the kids, and doing all of that wonderful stuff. But it wasn't until I had to forcibly been slowed down and sitting a lot in my own energy that really truly opened up like an egg, cracked me open to see those other possibilities. But I believe it was my people say it's your strength, you're so strong. We're always stronger than we think we are. And it's not until those moments that we really see who we are. And it's like a pair of glasses. Sometimes you have to wear glasses to see clearer. Sometimes you need to go through it. And we go through it to really open up and crack open that egg. And I believe we're all cracked, and we can't grow. It's like a seed, right? A plant. That shell casing has to break open before that beautiful plant can grow and fruit. And that's how I see us. Does that make sense? Like, that
It
was really
does.
deep. Like, I just went totally horticultural.
No, and actually, it was perfect because it leads perfectly to my next question for you. And this one is a little bit of a curve because this comes from your intro, and it's something that caught my eye. And it was like, when I read this part, I was like, oh, this is one of the reasons why I was like, oh, I got to have her on the show just because of the way you word it. And as you're talking about the seed growing and everything, that is how you label yourself as a gardener and a dirt worshiper. It's like,
I am. I am. I mean, even when it's raining, it's like it's my time, and I go out in the rain and I garden and I get muddy, and that's how I ground myself. I tell people, take your shoes off. Like, I grew up barefoot, and I know every inch of my property, and people would be like, ew, barefoot. Like, I don't walk down the street barefoot, but I am comfortable without my shoes on in my space, in the dirt. Like, it's just, I took a picture the other day of my nails. There are times during the year where I have nice, long, beautiful nails. And then there was me with dirt stained nails the other day. And I took a picture and I'm like, I love that. I love wearing dresses, but I like making mud pies in the backyard. So that's me.
I'm curious as you're gardening because I've noticed at times like I can feel energy coming off of a plant that looks like it's dying, but it's not. And it's like I feel like I can tap into it and add water, and while I'm watering, it's kind of like I feel like I'm putting energy as well through the water and helping.
And
And I
loving it.
and I surprised my mom by one of the plants that she thought for sure was dead actually started to green again and come back.
I love
And
that.
it doesn't work all the time, but we also do electroculture. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Is that with the copper piping?
It's actually you take like a wooden stick and you wrap copper around it and put it into the flower garden area, or we have it in our grass lawn in the backyard, and it actually helps everything to grow, in my opinion. And I wonder, as you're gardening, do you ever get the feeling or view like energy transference and you're like,
Did
see yourself putting energy into the garden as well?
you ever hug a tree?
Yes.
You can hug a tree and almost feel its vibration. And I didn't realize that there was a name for what you just said, but I do. I have copper piping in my garden. One of my very close friends, soul sister, she's the other side of my investigative team, No Side Paranormal, which is Edison spelt backwards. She got the wooden stakes and she wrapped the copper around it. So I do believe that energy flows. Something that's very new to me, which I've never been able to do, but it was taught to me. And as I was going through this experience with a very spiritually gifted, you like you say you do Reiki, he does energy movement and healing. And he showed me how when trees split, they split because of energy lines. And in that moment, we were at a very old location. I could start seeing these like waves. And he's like, whenever you see a tree that's split, you can actually, you know how sometimes you can practice seeing an aura? You know, if
Right.
it's like candle gazing. Well, it's the same thing when you see a split in a tree, you can almost see that current running through. There's energy in everything. And I love going out to water my plants, and I'm happy and I sing and I play music and all that other stuff. And they say that that really helps the plants. And you just shared that story about the dying plant. My mother and I used to make fun of my mother because my mother would always be in the garden while I was out, with the high 80s, hair and clubbing and running around with my friends down the shore and all that other stuff. And, in hindsight, it's like you turn into your parents, right? But we went to Home Depot and there was, I guess, Proven Winners is one of their plant companies that they get their plants from, and there was this smell of tangerines. And I'm like, what is that? And we walked up to this section of like rose bushes, and there was this little stick like out of the dirt, and the woman who was watering the plants came over to me, and I'm like, oh my God, like what's wrong with this plant? Is it dead? And she's like, no, you can save it. And she sold it to me for $1. And I brought it home and I planted it, and it grew the most wonderful orange. I have them on my Facebook page, and just glowing orange roses. And I unfortunately just lost it this last season, but I do believe in energy. I believe in the conduit of it, that you can attract it. I know that I heard a story about somebody planting or putting fence poles in their yard of copper, and when it would storm, it was like it would go around. It was like energy bending, right? I do believe in that.
Wow, that's interesting. I never thought about putting poles around to keep
Your
the weather
yard.
out because we view the rain as good. We don't have to go out and water. Nature's watering for us. So it's like we kind of are the opposite. We want the storm.
Well, you and I were just talking earlier about the rain and all this other stuff, and I don't get out to my gardens to water as much as I do, but I fought for so long to get on a sprinkler system because I needed to be out there with them, watering them and putting that love. And I just, you know, it's just doing that in everything that you do.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I go in phases where I can be out there watering, and then it'll be like 2 or 3 weeks later, and I'm realized I haven't gone out and watered in a while. I'm glad I'm with someone who does, because it's like it just somehow bypasses my mind. But in mentioning your paranormal team, No Side Paranormal, I'm curious. What's everybody likes a good origin story, and so what's the origin story besides, like you said, I looked at that name several times and never realized it was Edison backwards.
Well, it has a dual purpose. So, without getting deep, it's Edison spelled backwards. And when I started doing, and it wasn't like really investigating, I've always had a love of old homes, plantations. I have very strong, I've had a couple of past life regressions, and I was always meant to be in the South. But everybody called it like, everybody gets caught up in those labels. I always love going to the historic old homes and the smells, and there were always energies around me. Like that was something that was never not there, but people would like, oh, go investigate. So No Side Paranormal Investigation was born, and we are an all female investigative team that really just goes out and provides paranormal therapy. And what I mean about that is that we exist with energies that have been here for thousands of years. So, like, you buy an old home, you start renovating it, and you start having paranormal experiences. Well, if you approached it a little bit differently and just talked to the house and the property and what you're doing, and asking for the blessing and just loving it, right, like a plant, sometimes those experiences are a little bit better. But it's really no side. So the dual meaning is we don't have sides. We talked about the light, the gray, the darker light. It's all existing. So whether we're here in this 3D journey, or like my mom is in her next journey, she's left this life. People will say death, which I don't believe in. I believe in the continuation, just on a higher energetic level. Um, it really hit me one day, and that's what hit me was there are no sides. We're in this. We're doing it all together. Where you are, no matter what you look like, where you come from, or where those energies come from. So that's kind of deeper. I like that you went there, thinking about that no side. But when I talk about no side, I actually see like a reflection, like a mirror kind of thing, where it's like flipped. Just how I see it.
No,
I should
I
draw
love
it.
that. And one of the things that I kind of looking at and wondering is everybody thinks of the paranormal as being like the TV shows. And so there's a few people out there that I enjoy talking with because we have different views of what the paranormal is. And so before I go any deeper and ask deeper, questions, I'm curious to see what is your viewpoint and definition of the paranormal when people ask you.
I think I just understand where they're coming from. Again, we were talking about like titles and labels and explanations. I think paranormal is the idea of what you can't see. Like, there are times where I feel energies and I know who they are, can actually like see them in my mind. like a TV screen. And then there are times where I'll turn and I actually see, a different form of a person. So I think when people say paranormal, it's just understood that it's not in our human bodies, our vessels, our suits.
Okay, the reason I ask is to me, it's anything that's unexplainable. So I'm like, for me, then I'm able to broaden where I go with shows because I feel like so many topics that we could be talking about, some people are like, no, that's not what that is. And I'm like, well, it's unexplained, so therefore it counts.
There is a balance with the science, right? But then you have people who are able to see those energies and see that they exist and know that they're real and trust that process, and you've been through a thing or two. So I think it's I think it's very similar to perception, right? Um, how we view what it is. There's a lot of stuff that's unexplainable, but it's there. And I think a lot of it, some people don't believe in paranormal equipment, right? Some people believe in that science and the K2s and all that other stuff. I mean, I am my own piece of equipment. So paranormal can be unexplained. There are things that happen and I'm like, I don't understand that. And then I'll go and I'll ask, like, can you show me what that was? I'm not really sure. I don't think that I ever feel really scared about anything like that, but there's a lot that's unexplained unless you are able to know the journey of that. It's a balance. There is a science behind it, but
It
sometimes things just can't be explained. So I do agree with that to an extent, yes.
Well, and I also like it because, like, I could catch something on equipment, and it's like scientifically I can explain it, but I can't explain how it happened. So I'm like, that's where I view it as like the unexplained is the best way for me, is because even if I can prove it to you, I can't explain how it happened. So in the end, it's still unexplained because, yeah, like, I can say, oh, well, the recorder picked up the electromagnetic frequency of the voice. Hence, it's called an electro uh, voice projection, or EVP. And I'm like, I can explain it that way. But if somebody goes, so how did the equipment pick up the voice? I don't know. That's unexplained to me. And how the voice was even there in the first place to be picked up, where it came from, I can't explain. Even if I see an apparition, I'm like, well, it came from this lady. Well, how's that lady here? I don't
Right.
know. So it's like, to me, I feel like calling it the unexplained is like a mystery that you get to go into, and it just keeps going. Because every time you get answers, you get more questions too.
You know
And
what?
so
I'll
it's,
take it. I'll take it. I'm not, I believe in all of it. I mean, I have been at locations where I go back 10, 15 times. There's a location in New Jersey in Burlington, and it's called White Hill Mansion. And every time I go, and I feel like she calls to you, but it's an old, I mean, so many things have happened there. They signed uh, the document to build the New Jersey Turnpike there in the basement. And it's got so much history. But every time I go, I have a different experience. I meet a different energy. Somebody will have the voice recorder and I'll, be talking, not aloud, but, you know, with an energy, and then it's not that kind of hearing, but then it'll catch another voice on it that I wasn't communicating with, nor did I feel. So it's in that moment, at that time, whatever goes, it is unexplained. It's never the same, ever. So I will take your view and I will agree with it.
Well, thank you. And validation is always appreciated. And, I like your viewpoint too. So, I love the exchange of it and everything. And I'm curious because everybody that's in the paranormal has an experience that one started them on this path into going towards all the stuff that other people would go away from. And I'm going to throw a twist in there of what was the one experience where you sat there and was like, when everything was said and done, and go, this is
I just
definitely
got
what I'm meant
chills.
to be. Like the aha, this is it.
So it's like a firefighter, right? When a building's burning, they run towards the fire, not away from it. And there are certain things that we're called to do. And it was a vacation at my uncle's house in Ellijay, Georgia. He's from Jersey. So he bought this, I'm going to say a shoebox. He bought this shoebox house. It literally reminds me of like a wooden shed, but it was somebody's home at some one point. So he bought it and he had a local start renovating it for him. And he got it at a really good price. This is all the chatter that you hear when you're growing up and over family dinners and stuff. So my mother would send us to either Chattanooga, Tennessee, where her one brother was, or we were going to Ellijay, Georgia, to the mountain with my uncle. And we were just excited. Like, all I wanted to do was go fishing. I love fishing. And we're in his bedroom, him and my aunt's bedroom. They were actually sleeping on the pull-out couch, and they had this water bed, right? They don't have them anymore. But I just remember how warm it was and floaty it was. And the room was a little bit dark. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I sat up and I just kind of scanned the room, and the moon was shining through the curtains, and there was this man, and he was like, I saw him, but he was dark, like he was just like a shadow figure. And he's staring out the window, and I'm looking at him, and I wasn't scared. I was more like, dude, you good? I'm looking at him going, like, is that my uncle? Like, I'm trying to process it. And I saw that he had a stick in his hand, like a walking stick. So I just kind of shut my eyes and I'm like, wow, okay. And I opened them up again. He was gone. All right, got up, went to the bathroom, went back to bed, and we're eating not dinner, lunch the next day. And my aunt's making us macaroni and cheese. And I'm like, hey, Annalene, I have a question for you. And she's like, what? And so I was probably 8 years old, 7 or 8. I said, "Do you ever see the man in your bedroom?" She turned around and she just turned stark white and her eyes were big. And she looked at my uncle. My uncle goes, "What'd you just say?" And I go, "The man in your bedroom with the stick. You saw a man?" And I go, "Yeah, I saw him in the middle of the night. Like, what's going on?" So, anyway, long story short, before the house was renovated, that was a porch. And the family that lived there, he wound up outliving his, family moves away, his wife passed away. And he actually, what I saw as a stick was actually a shotgun in his hand. He actually killed himself in that spot on the deck, which was renovated to a bedroom. And calling that energy in again, I think that was it. When I knew that I knew, but I didn't know because nobody talked about it. Nobody wanted to hear about my stories. Wow. That had me curious. And growing up and spending a lot of time with my grandparents, my father's parents, I was always deeply interested in like the mafia stories and the ghost books that they had. And, my mom would be like, Stacey Lynne, that's so dark. Like, she would yell at my grandmother, don't let her read those books. So now reflecting back on those times, I'm like, she knew. She knew. Like she knew she was interested in it too. So that moment was like, wow. But it was a really long time after that before I saw another figure, and probably until 2017 when my grandfather showed up and I'm like, well, this is familiar. Wow, okay. And you know what? Just never stopped from there. And it's just been crazy since 2017. But what brought me there was that I believe it was that septic sick crossover. And so somebody once said to me, well, when you die and you come back or you have a near death experience, you're like a half human. You have one side, you had a foot over there and you have a foot here, which kind of makes you like in that gray area. Call it what you will. But I always had people come to me in my dreams in that state. And in that moment, in October of 2017, it all changed. And I'm still growing and I'm still learning every day. I have new experiences, but the intuitive, the precognitive, the knowing, the sensing, I think that was really the first time. My first shadow figure, like, was another turning point to me because I know I saw what I saw. I was working a lot of long hours and driving 103 miles a day, and it happened up the street. I fell asleep behind the wheel of my truck. And as I was falling asleep, this huge, it was like a giant, dark, and it was male, jumped out. And I saw it and it scared me tremendously. But this is how it evolved over the years. Like that's kind of when I was like, wow, that was a guardian angel. He jumped, and I say he because it was masculine. It was a male energy, jumped out at me and woke me up so I didn't crash into the tree that he jumped out from. So it's just all these experiences, and I just think that when you see it and you know it and you feel it, it just doesn't stop. It knows you and it wants to be seen and it wants to help. And that's just how it's been for me.
Right. That's really cool. And I'm looking at the clock. We're actually at like the hour. Do you have time for a few more questions or do you need to
I
go?
do. I do. I love this. It's great.
Well, one question I have for you, and this is just something that comes up in my mind, is like you said, the shadow being jumped from the tree, and you say, guardian angel. My first thought was elemental because it came from the tree, protecting the tree and you. So it's like, I wonder, could the guardian
It
angel
can
have
be
been an
both.
elemental?
It can be both. And it's so funny that you asked me that question because my my other half, her name is Mare. We went to a local para unity expo here that's held in Woodbridge. and the Hinsdale house was there. And I don't know if you know the Hinsdale house. Don't
Is
ask
it?
me where it is. I think it's in upstate New York. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
But
Daniel Cleese runs it, right? I think.
New Jersey Paranormal,
Oh, okay.
John and Chris of New Jersey Paranormal and JP, uh, ho- they're the hosts of that, and it was my first experience with a male tree elemental, and he had red crazy hair, and he looked like an Irish leprechaun on top, but it was literally a tree. And I draw everything. I sketch everything that I see. And, my girlfriend, like I said, squirrel, she's like, what is going on? And I'm like, oh my God. We were going to get something to eat to go back that night. So when we sat down, I said, I saw this elemental energy and I drew it on a napkin for her. And I guess it was 2 or 3 years later, it changed owners again. Like it just kept changing owners, and they were started to do a renovation, and the owner went outside and felt the need, right, out of a whim to take a picture of the woods, and he captured in that picture what I saw. It's a little blurry. So you're saying, could it be? Yes, it could be, but they can take any shape and form, right? Our guides and our ancestors and whatever. At that time, I didn't talk about it. I didn't come home and tell my husband, oh my God, I almost crashed into a tree up the street and I saw this big shadow figure jumped out and, woke me up and whatever. Like, I didn't talk about it for a really long time. Looking back, I just felt and I still feel it was a guardian angel. It could be. I hug trees. I love trees. Maybe that's, tree hugger, elemental energy. It could have been. I just knew when I reconciled that in my mind, because you're like, what was that? Am I crazy? You're not crazy. But there's a lot of stories about that, ever watch those videos and they're catching so much on camera now, where the guy's walking down the street, it's like paranormal caught on tape, and all of a sudden this person taps him on the shoulder and he turns around, the gate swings and misses him. I think that they can take elemental energy comes from the land, but it's also what we create and believe that helps it form. It's like a collection of energies, like a poltergeist. Like, do you believe in poltergeist energy and the fact that we help create that?
Oh, 100%.
So I
Because
believe, like, I get and dig what you're saying and throwing down. I do believe that, yes, that could have been an elemental guardian energy. I know what I saw, and boy, it was wicked. It was real.
now, were you gardening at this time, or did that start later?
That started much later. That was not my suit and high hair days. So I killed everything. Didn't like plants, made fun of my mother. My sister was actually a gardener. So my love for gardening and that evolution came from my hate of it. My sister decided that she was going to be funny and send me a tomato plant on my birthday. Challenge accepted. I never looked back. And it grew every year down my deck, across the yard. Now I've got containers. It's everywhere. Like it's like the Arcadian gardens of Edison. Yeah. But it's a passion and it just doesn't ever stop now. But I evolved into that, and it was one tomato plant, and now I've got about 35 out in my garden.
Yeah, the paranormal twist of what I was going with was if you were gardening then, maybe the elementals were like, hey, she's, working with the land. She's one of us. And let's protect her and came out of the tree. It'd make more sense with the elemental side. But if you hadn't started
I
the gardening yet, I don't know that the elementals would even have you on their radar.
no, and that whole thing is like that's an evolution, being able to see and all that other stuff, but led down that path, it's so familiar to me now and I can't imagine not ever doing it. But I think that as you dirt worship and you ground, take your shoes off and get out in the grass, I do absolutely believe that that raises your vibe. Mhm.
Now, I have an interesting theoretical type question for you, and
Oh boy.
I
I'm
don't
gonna
know if
fail
you
on
can
this one.
answer. If you can't, that's fine. But I'm curious because you talk about having precog ability and being a psychic medium. I have had moments where, I channeled for a little while, and every once in a while, before I was channeling and after, I get a feeling of something's going to happen. And so I'll change what I'm doing, kind of like a precog experience. So I'm wondering, is precog an ability that awakens the mediumship and psychic side? Or is it just appears that way and it's not really that way?
So I'm gonna loop back to the my comment, like my explanation on intuition. So I do we have labels for everything, right? We to describe how we're able to do something. So I believe that we all have that ability. But how I would like to explain it to people is you go to the gym, why? To build muscle and get stronger. As you acknowledge your experiences and trust that process, right? And be in flow, really, just being in flow, you're working your spiritual muscles. So I think as you use it and you accept it, I do believe that it continues to grow. I do think that there's an acknowledgement there, but precognitive is the ability to know I shouldn't walk down that dark street with no lamps, or I shouldn't be walking in the middle of a mountain that doesn't have a town, or say, like, all right, here's the thing. So, like, I went to work every single day. I went, 50 miles one way, 50 miles the other way. And you know how it's like you leave for work and then you're sitting at your desk and you're like, I don't even really remember the ride. It's like you get it, you go to that comfortable transient place, but you were present, but you were somewhere else doing something else, right? I don't
Exactly. Yeah.
remember, I remember leaving, but I don't remember that journey to work. It's like cruise control
Yeah. I call it zoning out.
or tuning in.
Yeah.
So my whole thing with that is that we have intuition where we know we shouldn't do something because it's going to turn out bad, and then we do stuff that we know we shouldn't do. You like I have that. Stacey, don't do that. That's not going to work. You're going to hurt yourself. And then I hurt myself and I'm like I should have listened to myself. So we all have that. That is absolutely there. But trusting that it's there and that you're just not talking to yourself. You're not talking to yourself. It's a higher knowing, intuition, precognitive. It's just a knowing. You drive the same route every single day, but one day you decide, I don't want to go that way. And then you hear later that there was an accident there. And you say to yourself, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't go that way. Like, why did I feel today that I shouldn't have gone? So what I'll share with you really quick that people, it's all relatable. How we can really people that they can do this, right? September 11th and the World Trade Towers. I tried to get a job within my company at the World Trade Center. And 2 weeks before that happened, I interviewed for a managerial position. I didn't take it. The commute, the hours on the train, the waiting for the train, like it was just so overwhelming to me. And I honestly didn't want to run around New York City. I liked my cushy little, 10-mile drive to work and my short commute. And then that happened. And that makes you sit there and go, well, why didn't I take that job? Well, why didn't I do this? Or you'll hear those stories of I called out sick that day. I didn't want to go. So is there really just ever knowing? It's so much bigger than we can ever explain, but it's how we go through it and perceive it and then share and grow those spiritual muscles. I don't know, call me flighty and whimsical, but that's how I feel when we talk about this because it's just so much bigger. And I just love to share about what I see and I love to validate what somebody's going through because they're going through it and it's real. It exists.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about paranormal podcasting is happening right now. It's you, throughout the show, it's like you had this soft, mellow sound. And just now, it's just like you shifted into another room, even though you're not in another room. And it's like I'm sitting here and I'm like, did something happen to the mic? What's going on? And I'm like, there's nothing on my end that shows why all of a suddenly the sound is altered. You're still clear. It's just you sound like you're in like a hallway or something versus the room you've been in. It's like just there's something about the tone and the voice. It's like you're in a different space, even though you're in the same space.
I'm in different spaces a lot, but it's just so amazing. And you are making me go through all of these shifts and timelines and memories and situation shifts. And I just can't. It's amazing, right? It's like, it's just all so amazing. And I love working with others and talking to others and getting your perspective and hearing mine, which is probably really whimsical, but it's just the way I'm going through it. And I want to say blessed. It's stressful, it's not knowing, and it's learning to trust that process so I can keep going, right? Being present. It takes a lot of sitting within and it takes a lot of forgiveness for yourself to work through all the crap that we experience. And it's like the trenches. And I'm not in the trenches right now. I really was. And, I'm not saying I don't walk down the hallway and bump into every wall while I'm going down it. But to get to where I'm going and to see something different, it's never ending. We never stop growing. We never stop learning. And the great thing is like hearing your perspective on everything grows me even more. So That's what we're here. We are the light to shine bright for others to follow, but there are others that come in our path that are shining theirs so we can find ours. I just call it like that tumbleweed. We just keep rolling.
Yeah, like we say, this is how I roll.
I roll with it in the dirt with my tomato plants.
So one last thing I'm curious to ask, and then we may look at the time again, is a lot of people talk about shadow work and how they are like, I want to avoid it at all costs. It leads to like dark nights of the soul, and I don't know if you've had those, but what advice I would say, putting positive to a negative perception, I'm not saying a negative experience, just perception of it. What positive would you give to people that are going through it as kind of like a kernel of hope of, yes, you can get through this. It'll be okay.
Well, we're always in a much better place than we were. Always, right? And I tell people when I read tarot and I interpret the cards from an artistic explanation point of view, it just helps me communicate more along with validating what I'm channeling for whoever that is. But you can never stay in your size 4 shoe. Your feet grow. You can't stay there in those shoes. You have to buy shoes that are growing with you. So when somebody says, and this is going to, sorry, long-winded explanation, but why do these things always happen to me? And then you'll be like, because you're not learning your lesson. Well, everybody has that, the same situations and the same repeats. So what I'm going to say is it's what's on the other side. Growing up, you ever be in that, like, that situation that you thought you were going to die? How am I going to get through this? Oh my God, it's so bad. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm never going to get out of this and I'm never going to recover. And then, 30 years later, look at you. So life only keeps throwing at you what you're not learning. So learn from it. If I tell people, like, when you argue with somebody or having a conversation, it's like, never discuss politics at the dinner table with your family, right? You have to sit, and if you're asking yourself, why did I get into that fight with that person? Why did that argument trigger me? Oh, it's raining in Texas. No, it's not. There's blue skies, but the raindrops are coming down and things are wet and everything like that. And then you get into a fight. So when you're getting triggered by something, I tell people it's because it's something that you're not learning. Really look into that argument. Why did you get so mad? Why did you disagree? Why did you get so defensive, right? It's those defensive moments. And I talk a lot on my channel about there's responding and there's reacting. And if there's a reaction, that's a trigger that you're not learning that can come from a past life recall. It's that genetic string that runs through all of our families that repeats situations. And a lot of people don't talk about it, but when you talk about it, your situations aren't really that different. You just experience them differently. So if you can't learn, when you say, so I'm in digital marketing, I am a strategic thinker, analyst, and I
call myself a marketing maverick, but I will never call myself an expert because I am always learning. And I think that being in that moment and understanding that this is all about learning, it's all about getting to know yourself and those around you and being a better person when you get up the next day and doing it better than you did the day before. And that's the process, is just doing better every single day. And when you go through the trenches, and I can share some videos with you 5 years ago, waking up and going, what is going on? And who can tell me what is going on and why I'm going through these things and why I'm having these recalls and these deja vus that are so horrific, right? Getting chased down the street and waking up before you get hit. Like, why am I going through these? And I keep going through it. Well, it can be bigger than that. So for the people that are like, why do I keep going through the situation? It's something that you're not learning. It's something that you're not realizing. The universe only gives you so many times to figure it out and work on it before your bridge blows up. But I can guarantee you, if the bridge blows up, there's still a boat to take to the other side. There's always a way. So I would just say to everybody who's listening, don't give up and get excited about waking up the next day. And if you're not batshit passionate, am I allowed to curse? About that process, I'm sorry, the jersey just came out. What are you doing? Are you on cruise control? Get off of cruise control and start living your life. And it's about the bumps and the bruises and getting back up and falling down. And every time you get back up, I promise it's always better. You're always stronger, and you'll always get to somewhere different. And if that's not changing, then you need to make a change. I know I'm making it sound simple, but it's just all of these years of experience in hindsight and just convincing trust that process. But we're not on the same, there's levels and dimensions. That's something in my bio. We're all at different places and we all do this through our life. It's like that 6 degrees of separation. Trust those who go to grow. And if they come back, there's a reason for that. But it's all, I believe, for the growth of our journey. And forgiveness is really for us and nobody else. Let it go and grow with it. Be in flow. It's like current. It's like the water. Jellyfish, they don't know where they're going, but they're beautiful, graceful, and they can be deadly. But they go where the current takes them. Flow with that current. Trust the process is so cliche, I know.
No, and it's funny is because in growing up metaphysical, we were always told, who told you it was going to be a difficult journey? It's as hard as you make it. So if you want to make it like you're going up Mount Everest, good luck with that. If you want to make it like you're climbing a little anthill, good luck with that.
It's all perception.
Right. Well, thank you for this episode, and we are getting close to an hour and a half, so we're gonna definitely have you back on because I feel like there's so much more, and it's been such a joy talking with you. So we'd love to have you back on.
I would love to be back on. It's a lot of fun. There's so much to talk about, and this is just cracking the seed. Thank you so much. I really had fun.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to everyone who's going to be watching this and is watching it while we're playing it live and premiering it. And is there any way, if people have questions or want to ask you questions, is there a way that you would prefer them to reach out to you?
Well, I have a couple of Facebook profiles. One's Stacey Lynne, and the other one is No Side Paranormal. And my email and my cell phone number are on there. You can message me, text me. If you call me, I probably won't pick up because I don't know, I rarely do that. But I'm really easy to find and get in touch with.
And all her links are in the bio description. So thank you for a wonderful episode. And maybe next time she comes back on, we'll have it to where it's live.
That would
So,
be fun. Maybe do some readings. I could do
ooh,
some channeling before.
there you go. We'll definitely have to look into that.
All right. Well,
So,
thank you.
thank you, and good night, everyone.
Night.